People actually subscribe.
All across central New York.
Time expired! Syracuse has done it!
It's Drive Time with your host, Tim Leonard.
Hey, guess what? I'm getting one. Hey!
We welcome you into Drive Time. 19 hours away from finding out if Syracuse and Fran Brown are getting washed tomorrow. More specifically, if Fran Brown is getting washed. I think the rest of the team showers even when they lose. We don't know about Fran Brown, though. One of the biggest games, really, of the Fran Brown era. A big litmus test game for Syracuse as they go down to Death Valley. The team, I'm sure, already on their way down there, maybe already down there. And it'll be a noon kickoff tomorrow. We are now 19 hours away from the big kickoff down in Clemson. So we'll make our full prediction today for how the game will go tomorrow. We welcome your predictions on the show today via the Q Sports Talk chat. As always, you can drop your score predictions in there. You can also call in. Phone lines are open throughout the show today at 315-437-7644. 315-437-7644. That is the phone number to call. And anytime we are here with you on Drive Time, we welcome your phone calls on Syracuse sports or anything else that is on your mind. So we'll get into my full prediction in a little bit. Also a reminder, because we are very close to the kickoff tomorrow, we do have a very cool thing going on during the game tomorrow on our station, on Q Sports Talk, on our Twitch stream. We've got a full Labatt Blue watch party, which will be live at Shaughnessy's Irish Pub, downtown Syracuse. Great spot to watch the game in general. Great spot to be in general and get some good food and watch any sporting event. Right off the Hotel Syracuse, the downtown Marriott there is Shaughnessy's Irish Pub. And I'm sure it will be hopping tomorrow. I'm sure the chat will be hopping tomorrow. So keep us in mind for that noon kickoff tomorrow. Our full watch party starts with the pregame show, which will be live, as always, at Shaughnessy's Irish Pub. We're typically live there for home games. We will be live there tomorrow for the road game against Clemson because it is our Labatt Blue watch party. So Giovanni Heater out there with Mike McAllister. They'll be doing the pregame live at Shaughnessy's. You can come on out, hang with them, and then watch the game with them. They'll stay there for the game. We will have the Q Sports Talk chat rolling throughout the game, and it'll be a grand old time tomorrow at Shaughnessy's Irish Pub. We're going to bring on Gio in a little bit, get his thoughts on this matchup and what he thinks of the whole Syracuse-Clemson series and his perspective on the game. So we're really just welcoming any and all score predictions today on a Friday ahead of this big game against Clemson tomorrow, noon kick down in Death Valley. So keep that in mind. The Shaughnessy's Labatt Blue watch party tomorrow. Post-game show also will be out at Shaughnessy's with Gio staying out there and doing his full post-game show. So in general, you should always keep us in mind for pregame, for postgame, for game days here. But especially tomorrow, come on out and join us at Shaughnessy's Irish Pub. It'll be a fun time tomorrow for our Labatt Blue watch party. But we begin the show today with my prediction for this Syracuse-Clemson game tomorrow. And again, phone lines open throughout the show, 315-437-7644. If you have any thoughts on a score prediction, if you have thoughts on keys to the game for the Orange, what this game comes down to tomorrow, we welcome your phone calls. I've said it throughout the week, and if you've been listening throughout the week, I'm pretty down on Syracuse's chances in this matchup. I don't like the spot that they are in here. I don't like that Clemson is a really talented team that at some point is going to figure it out, I believe. And they have a good coaching staff, and they're at home, and they return a ton of production from last year, and it's been a mystery, honestly, why Clemson has been this poorly to this point in this season. They are 1-2. They're staring down the barrel at their worst start in 21 years. If they fall to 1-3, it would be arguably the worst loss of the Dabo Swinney era. So they're very desperate. And I think they're a better football team than what they have showcased through 3 games. Right now, my score prediction for the game tomorrow is Clemson 34, Syracuse 13. The spread is 17.5. At least that's what it is on most sites. And I think Syracuse will be competitive in covering that spread, but I lean towards Clemson covering right now. And the biggest reasons for that is I think we're going to see for the first time this season Clemson's A game tomorrow. I think it's a tough spot for the Orange. And I also feel that Syracuse just in general does not match up well against Clemson. What Syracuse does well and what they have done well in the Jeff Nixon offense in the Fran Brown era is get explosive plays through the air. We did not see any explosive plays in their first game against Tennessee. And I keep going back to that Tennessee game because it's the most similar opponent we have seen to this point through 3 games for Syracuse. To me, Clemson isn't as good as Tennessee, but they are at home and they are really talented. And I think when you look back on what Syracuse did well and what Syracuse did poorly against Tennessee, that gives us a good indication of how tomorrow's game is going to go. And to me, Syracuse's best part of the game against Tennessee was that they ran the football pretty well. And we saw that in the second half. After a tough first quarter, they settled in. And it wasn't necessarily explosive plays or chunk plays. The longest run they had in that game was a 14-yard rush from Yasin Willis back in week 1 against Tennessee. But they still were able to move the ball on the ground. Unfortunately for Syracuse, Clemson has been okay defensively this season. And the best part about their okay defense has been their run defense. It was actually the weakest part about Clemson's defense last year. New defensive coordinator Tom Allen from Penn State, former head coach at Indiana. He's known for stopping the run, and they've done a nice job. They really honestly held Georgia Tech's ground game in check last week. Haynes King burned them on 3rd down, and there was the 90-yard drive towards the end of the game where Georgia Tech just kept getting the critical 3rd downs to extend the drive. Yellow Jackets were 8 for 15 on 3rd down last week. So 3rd down, always important, but that's a sign that Clemson has been maybe a little bit better defensively than we're giving them credit. They just couldn't get off the field last week, and it's tough to get off the field when Haynes King is an option in 3rd and short situations. It's the same reason why Syracuse got a lot of 3rd and shorts when they had Eric Dungy. One of those quarterbacks is usually a pretty good option when you get in 3rd and short situations. I feel like Syracuse is going to have a tough time running the football tomorrow. The good news that came out of the Fran Brown show last night, which is always over at Myers Creek in the Inner Harbor and broadcasted on the Syracuse Sports Network from Learfield, he told Matt Park that injury-wise, Syracuse is looking pretty good. We got our first taste of the official ACC injury reports last night. There were a lot of questionables. There were some probables for Syracuse. Really, the biggest takeaway from the injury reports last night is Clemson is going to be as healthy as they have been at any point this season. It seems like they have 4 starters that are now listed as probable and probably returning to the game. And Antonio Williams, their star wide receiver, is the biggest one. So you also think back on what did Tennessee do well and what did Syracuse struggle with on a similar stage in week 1. Tennessee hit some big plays in their passing game. And we talked about Syracuse needs to hit big plays in the passing game usually to move the ball. Well, Clemson is really good at avoiding explosive plays. Right now, they are second best in the ACC defensively in limiting explosive passing plays. Clemson actually has been getting burned a lot in quick game stuff, which is basically just throwing it quickly out to the side and trying to put your wide receivers in space, quick hitters on the perimeter. Clemson has struggled to tackle in those situations. And it's a lot of misdirection and quick game that have cost the Tigers to this point and been the vulnerable side of their defense. So Syracuse is pretty good at that as well. I think they will be able to exploit that. I just worry that the Orange are not going to hit as many explosive plays because, one, Clemson is very good at preventing explosive plays. And 2, Clemson matches up really well in the trenches against Syracuse. Clemson's defensive line is the best one that Syracuse will see on paper this season. So that concerns me. Steve Angeli was sacked 5 times against Tennessee. I don't know if Clemson's going to get to him 5 times, but I feel like Clemson's going to be able to stop the run from Syracuse, make them one-dimensional, and we kind of saw when Syracuse was struggling against Tennessee to hit those deep shots that the offense isn't quite as good maybe as last year at hitting some of those explosive plays. We've seen it the last 2 weeks, but it's a whole nother thing to do it against Clemson, a team that has been very good this year at not allowing explosive plays in the passing game. And then really the biggest thing that worries me about this matchup for Syracuse is how their defense lines up against Cade Klubnik and Clemson. And Klubnik, honestly, hasn't been very good to this point in the season. But the reason why Cade Klubnik has been bad is he's been getting pressured a lot. And he's been getting blitzed way more than he did last season. And Syracuse has been blitzing more, but they aren't getting home right now. And I don't have much confidence that the Orange are going to actually pressure Cade Klubnik in this game. And Klubnik is a guy that I would say is kind of a stat patter. He plays very well against bad defenses. He struggled in big moments, and he struggled against the better defenses that he goes up against. We've talked about that throughout the week. Unfortunately, Syracuse's defense, objectively right now, and statistically right now, is bad. They're 122nd in the country in total defense. They're 118th in the country in passing yards allowed. 104th in rush defense. Some of that I feel like is they went into their bench and they allowed some points to Colgate. And they haven't been totally healthy, and they're going to get Devin Grant back, it seems like, for this game. So I don't think they're necessarily 122 in the country bad defensively. But I don't think they have much of a pass rush. I think if they had a pass rush, we would have seen it by now. They only have 3 sacks on the season. And I feel like if Cade Klubnik is given time in the pocket, which all signs point to him being given time in the pocket in this game, their offensive line is going to be as healthy as they have been all season. We chatted with Don Munson on Orange Nation earlier today. He's the voice of the Clemson Tigers. He said they finally have the offensive line that they thought they were going to have going back to August. Looks like this is the first time all year they're going to have that. Looks like they're going to have Antonio Williams, who is a potential first-round pick on the outside at receiver. And that makes it tough because Brian Wesco now is maybe being guarded by Demetrius Samuel, who I think has done a nice job, really nice job for anyone, really, really nice job for a 17-year-old true freshman. But Samuel is getting targeted the 3rd most of any cornerback in the country to this point in the season. And I do feel like Cade Klubnik has looked good against bad defenses. He's looked good when he's been given time to throw. He's been able to hit deep shots when he's been given time to throw, and Syracuse has given up some deep shots in the passing game. You think back to how Tennessee beat him with Joey Aguilar. So that's kind of the case as to why I feel like Clemson wins this game, and my score prediction is 34-13, the Tigers over the Orange. We can also lay out the case, because that was very negative from a Syracuse standpoint. We can also lay out the case on why Syracuse could very well win this game. I really feel like the way the game starts is going to shape how we feel about the game, which is true for any game, of course, but more so for this game tomorrow. I think it's such a mindset game that if Syracuse does come out and throw the first punch, it could very well be game on from there. So we'll hit a timeout. We welcome your calls. We welcome your thoughts on the Q Sports Talk chat. 315-437-7644. Why do you disagree with me, maybe, on why I feel like Clemson matches up pretty well against Syracuse, and this should be a Clemson victory tomorrow? Again, my score prediction, 34-13. If you disagree, call in, and let's hash it out here at 4ESPN 44 is the phone number to call. We'll get to your thoughts in the chat as well. When we come back, we can get to your calls. We could also lay out the case as to why Syracuse could be in this game tomorrow. And it's not really that hard to do that either. So we'll get into that on the other side. This is Drive Time on ESPN Radio and QSportsTalk.com.
Auburn Community.
Fire Tim, yeah. Sorry, guys. It was a little negative. I'll lay out the case as to why they can hang in there. Yeah, it's a tough week for Clemson to be getting very healthy. Again, San Diego Cuse, I don't know if it's necessarily Elijah Robinson. I think they don't quite have the pieces there that they need to have. And the pieces that they did have last year are gone. You know, Diggs and Marlowe Wax. Like, they lost a lot of their nucleus in terms of the front seven. So, I'm not super down. Yeah, Tim is a downer. Sorry. I'm not super down on Elijah Robinson, but this is a really good offensive line from Clemson. I think we're just going to see a team tomorrow that has NFL bodies in the trenches. And Syracuse, as Fran even said, they got to recruit and they got to build up the program to get to a point where they're competitive with everyone. But I hope I'm wrong. Yeah, Watson would have helped. At a certain point, I mean, I think Max Chadwick, I don't know if you heard him earlier, he was on Orange Nation from Pro Football Focus, and he talked about how, like, the defensive line is the biggest concern, and it seems like when you look at the numbers, they're just not winning their matchups. Like, they are sending the extra rusher more than most teams. We've talked about how they had some opportunities. They had some hurries last game, which you should against Colgate, but they didn't really cash in on a lot of the sacks. Laughing at the Shaq, or was that Shaq or Charles Barkley who said that line, Rob Cuse 24? I saw something today that they're not going to mess with the inside the NBA format too much now that it's changing to ESPN. Which, God, I hope they don't.
Watch your favorite ESPN Syracuse sports talk shows on QSportsTalk.com.
Rolling along with Drive Time. Under 19 hours away from Syracuse and Clemson. Good to have this game back on the schedule. Did not play last year for the first time in quite a while. Orange, when they joined the ACC, every year they had played Clemson up until 2023. Syracuse has fared pretty well in this series. We know there's been some very memorable games. They are 5-2 against the spread against Clemson in the last 7 meetings. Last 3 times they've gone on the road as a big underdog like they will tomorrow, they have covered the spread. 2 of those games, you can make a case they should have won you some money on the money line as well and won the game. 2018 and 2022 were basically carbon copies of each other in terms of why Syracuse did not win the game and how the game flow went. Did take them down in 2017, as we all remember, that Friday the 13th night in 2017. And we'll see what the latest edition of the Syracuse and Clemson series has tomorrow. Don't forget, we will have a live watch party out at Shaughnessy's Irish Pub tomorrow. We'll have our full pregame coverage out there with Giovanni Heater and Mike McAllister. Also, our post-game coverage out at Shaughnessy's Irish Pub, our Labatt Blue watch party tomorrow. So you can watch the game along with all of us on the Q Sports Talk Twitch stream. You can chat away, react to all the big plays with Mike McAllister and Gio Heater. Gio will be joining us in just a little bit. We'll get his thoughts on the matchup tomorrow and what to expect from the watch party and the pregame and postgame coverage tomorrow. But I was all negative in the last segment, so let's at least put on our orange glasses for a little bit here. I laid out the case basically as to why I do think this is a tough matchup tomorrow for the Orange, and my prediction for the game tomorrow is Syracuse to fall 34-13 to Clemson. I think this is going to be the first time this season where Clemson's offense figures it out. The start of the game is going to be very important. And I do feel like Clemson's going to come down and score on the first drive and kind of put Syracuse on their heels from there. But the counter to that is if Syracuse can get a stop, which a lot of teams have been able to get a stop on Clemson this year in the first quarter. They have had slow starts to each and every game this year, including Troy. Troy got ahead 16-0 on them. So the counter is maybe Clemson just isn't really all that good, and maybe we totally overvalued them. And when I say we, that's everyone in the media. I mean, we had several people on our shows in the preseason saying this Clemson team is the pick to win the national title because they are number 1 in the country in returning production. They're number 1 in the country in returning offensive production. They're number 6 in the nation in returning defensive production, which adds up to number 1 overall. They literally bring back every starter on offense except for their running back, Phil Maffa. And actually, it seems like teams have really been daring Clemson to run over the last couple weeks. Georgia Tech specifically went to the too high safety look a lot and said, we'll just give you the running lanes because we don't want you to beat us over the top. And we know that's how Cade Klubnik has beaten teams in the past. So we'll see if Syracuse adopts that strategy. I feel like the Orange, just by nature, are a more aggressive team. I know the narrative is out there that they don't blitz enough, they don't get after the quarterback enough, they never get sacks. But the stats suggest that Syracuse is as aggressive as really anyone in the ACC this year. The problem is they haven't been able to capitalize on getting sacks and taking down the quarterback in the backfield. But if you could rattle Cade Klubnik, who has been shakeable to this point in the season, if you could get him on his heels early on in this game, we have seen a Cade Klubnik that it has to be coming into this game with some shaken confidence, because even against Troy, they didn't move the ball in the first half. He has not taken many deep shots in the first quarter this year. Don Munson, the voice of the Tigers, was on Orange Nation earlier today, and he said he's just kind of patting the ball too much. He's not letting it rip sometimes. So we'll see how the Orange game plan, but it felt like LSU was smart, and they blitzed the house, and they just kept sending pressure at Cade Klubnik. Now LSU has the pieces to get there more often than Syracuse. And Clemson's offensive line should unfortunately be a little bit healthier for this game compared to how they were in the LSU game. But it did feel like Klubnik, there was a corner blitz early on in that LSU game that came out of nowhere, and it kind of spooked him. And like any quarterback, when you're struggling to find time, it gets in your head. We saw it with Steve Angeli week 1 against Tennessee. So the case for Syracuse winning this game is they get off to a start that puts even more pressure on Clemson, because Clemson is going in right now with all the pressure. And Syracuse has no reason to put any pressure on themselves. They're not expected to win this game. They're 17.5-point underdogs. If they lose this game, you come back home and you try and take care of business against Duke, and the season's still on schedule for the most part. If Clemson loses this game, boy, after Dabo's presser early on this week and how he laid out all the cases of the seasons where they've gotten off to slow starts and they've always responded, if Clemson loses this game, it'll be national news that Clemson is 1-3 for the first time since 2004. Things will really be spiraling in Tigerland. There will be Florida State comparisons in terms of what Florida State became last year as the ACC favorite. And also, while we're making the case as to what Syracuse has to do to win this game, let's just discuss what happens if the Orange do pull off this upset. This would be one of the biggest wins on the road in a really long time in Syracuse football history. I remember last year they beat UNLV on the road, and UNLV was ranked number 25 in the country. And I found the stat last year, that was the first time they got a road ranked win since 2010 against West Virginia. It would not be a ranked win tomorrow, but as a 17.5-point underdog on the road, we'd have to do some digging on the last time that Syracuse was that big of a road underdog and got a win. We know they were 21-point underdogs in 2017 at home to Clemson. We know they were big underdogs to Virginia Tech because Dino told us after the game that some guy in Vegas had us losing by whatever. I think it was like 17 points in that game as well. That was 2016 to Virginia Tech when they hit the halfback pass and got the big upset. They've been big underdogs and won games at home, but Syracuse has not won many big games as a big underdog on the road. They've had their chances against Clemson. Those have been the two that really stick out. But this will be a different type of win for Fran Brown if he gets it tomorrow. And shoot, if you take down Clemson tomorrow, why wouldn't Syracuse be ranked on Monday? And the entire perception of the season and the schedule and maybe our fear that the schedule is going to be too much for a young team, well, that's kind of all out the window. All bets are off if you win this game tomorrow. You're 3-1, bring on Duke, maybe then you're 4-1. You're ranked in back-to-back seasons under a new head coach. Last time Syracuse has been ranked in back-to-back seasons, technically 2019 because they were a preseason top 25 team and started the year and stayed in the polls after week 1 when they beat Liberty, because we know they were ranked in 2018. But in reality, the last time they have been legitimately ranked, like into the middle portion of the season, and we're talking 4 games in, they would maybe be ranked after a win over Clemson. The last time they've had back-to-back seasons of being legitimately ranked, you got to go back to the late 90s. 1999 would be the last example outside of the 2018-2019 seasons. I mean, can you imagine if Syracuse goes down there and they win tomorrow? The callers into all our shows on the post game and next week is, boy, we got to do everything to keep Fran Brown. We got to do everything we can to make sure that Florida doesn't swoop in and take Fran Brown. I saw that already on the Florida message boards today, they're talking about Fran Brown, and it's popping up. Maybe he's the guy that they should go after. Phone lines are ringing 315-437-7644. If you have thoughts if you have a score prediction for Clemson and Syracuse tomorrow. We're kind of laying out the case for Syracuse to win this game. And one thing that I do feel like is one of the few things in this game that Syracuse matches up well against Clemson is what I talked about in the last segment, that Clemson has been vulnerable on the outside and has been playing too much soft coverage, that the quick game, the quick throws to the outside, some misdirection has fooled this Clemson defense. And Jeff Nixon's got a lot of that in his playbook. And Syracuse has a lot of different misdirection, and they can dip into that if they need to. And I'm sure they will, because it's already been a trend through 3 weeks that is how you beat Clemson. Not so much on the ground. Clemson has been pretty good in terms of stopping the run to this point in the season. But that's probably the pathway for Syracuse, is you establish that you can move the ball by just getting some quick hitters on the outside, force their safeties and their cornerbacks to make some tackles in space, use your speed on the outside. That would be part of the game plan, I would say, tomorrow, if the Orange want to go down there and get the win over Clemson. That's kind of the case for how they get it done. Let's go to the phone lines right now. Let's check in with our guy Scooter in Jamesville. What's on your mind, Scoot?
Yeah, Timmy. Basically, when I leave Dabo, I mean, he's always, of course, the diatribe you've heard. He reminds me more of a CEO type of coach than hands-on. I mean, I don't think he's calling the plays on offense. I mean, when you watch like a Deion Sanders on the sideline, you ever see that his microphone part of his headset's always pointed straight up? He's not talking to anybody. His coordinators are running the show. And I wonder with Dabo the same way, because I think this is their third offensive coordinator in 3 years.
Yeah.
And to me, the coordinators that won the titles aren't there anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, Scooter. I mean, Garrett Riley hasn't really been what they hoped he would be.
Right.
We've talked about how Klubnik is kind of a stat patter, and it seems like Garrett Riley's offense looks very good against Appalachian State and, some of the bottom feeders in the ACC, but they have not looked good against SEC teams in the last 2 years. They've lost 4 straight games to SEC teams. Even the last game of the regular season last year, Clemson's desperate. They have every reason in the world to scheme up the best game plan against their rival, South Carolina. They're at home, and they scored just 14 points in that game. So I can imagine the Clemson fans aren't happy with the current state of the offensive coordinator, and then I think they have struggled a little bit to find that defensive coordinator since Brent Venables became the head coach at Oklahoma, and he was such a big part of the culture. So there's something to be said for that. We saw it at Alabama. You see it at great programs that, Dabo had his really good coordinators for a good part of that run when they were in their glory days of 2015 to 2020, and now they've been trying to find the right one. I do think they have a good coordinator now defensively with Tom Allen, and they paid a lot of money for him.
Well, I think I'm going to use a name, and I know you always bust my chops about Boise State's classic example. They always replace the head coach with another offensive type of guy, because I always thought that when the offense goes south, if the head coach can't help, like a Scott Schaefer or Greg Robinson, and I said when they hired the defensive coordinator, when Harsin went to Auburn, and they hired a defensive guy with no head coach experience, that this thing is going to blow up in less than 2 years. They had to fire him, had to bring Derek Carter back, a 72-year-old guy, to run the offense, and it turned it around. That's what I was wondering. I mean, if the offense is going south and Dabo isn't part of the offense, he's got to rely on his coordinator, you're in trouble. And that's what I love about Coach Brown. He's a defensive guy, but he's got confidence in Jeff Nixon, and I think he's staying away from the offense. And I've always said this, if you watch Clemson's offense, even with the Trevor Lawrences of the world, the passing schemes were vanilla, and they had such great receivers.
They had unbelievable athletes, yeah.
And how many times is a 50-50 ball? You just throw it in the air and they go get it. Now all of a sudden they don't have the athletes, just like Florida State. When they start losing their athletes, and that's when Scott Frost was at Central Florida and Lane Kiffin with Florida Lane. They kind of poached some of their depth. That now they don't have the 6'3", 220-pound receiver that can jump vertically 40 inches. And all of a sudden now they got to get open. And I'm just kind of wondering if that's kind of the case there, now they have to go out and actually the passing schemes. And that's one thing about Syracuse. I think Pena, I think Jeff Nixon, Pena owes Jeff Nixon all the money at Penn State.
I agree.
Because when Pena caught the ball, I don't think he was the first option on the play.
Well, also, Pena was here for a number of years and didn't really do much. Yeah, and I get that he got better. Yeah, I think those are all good points, Scooter. I appreciate you checking in. That's Scooter in Jamesville, as always. And, you know, he's right that Clemson's offensive game plan and Clemson's offensive coordinator is not as good under Garrett Riley. Garrett Riley was from TCU, and Dabo picked him up after TCU had that great run and went to the national championship game. They haven't gotten a lot out of the Garrett Riley experience, the Garrett Riley offense. But the problem is they have gotten a good amount against bad defenses. And right now, it feels like if we had to pick, is Syracuse a good defense or is Syracuse a bad defense? I think if we remove the orange glasses, the orange tinted glasses, you have to lean towards they're a bad defense. Now, will they be as bad as 122 in the country in total defense? I don't think so. I think they'll get better. I think they're young, and I like the pieces they have for the future for sure. I think, you know, you've got a lot of guys that we could be seeing for a while, and they're getting some valuable experience, and they're only going to get better. Antoine Deloria and Demetrius Samuel come to mind, of course. But this is going to be a tall order considering Clemson does have NFL bodies on their offense. We're overdue for a timeout. If you'd like to chime in, 315-437-7644 is the phone number to call. Gio Heater will join us. We'll get his thoughts on the matchup tomorrow, Syracuse and Clemson, for a noon kick tomorrow. You're listening to Drive Time on ESPN Radio and QSportsTalk.com.
This is Orange.
Let's hope if they have to, they can do something to keep Fran. So, yeah, go for it. Yeah, I mean, if it comes down to that, I think they have the NIL and they've seen such an uptick, and they understand that this is such an important time to be good at football that maybe we'll see them empty their pockets more than they normally would. I was letting Scooter talk. I just, you know, had to keep us on time a little bit. I was already behind even when he called. Even before he called, I should say. Yeah, at Notre Dame in 2008. It's been a while, though. I mean, I would think you got to go back at least 15 years for a road win this big, as big as what tomorrow would be. Yeah, I mean, I think Fran helps the NIL coffers for sure. I think that was the first Scooter call, actually, into the new show. Which, I talk to him out there once a day, I feel like, when I'm picking up the phone for Orange Nation, so. Yeah, he's a super talented dude, bowling ball. I don't build into that was his first call. But I do feel like that second segment, I usually am going to see callers just because if you're going to call, that's kind of the window. It's kind of when people are listening, driving home, all that stuff. This does feel like a game where we're all going to overreact, aren't we? Because it doesn't feel like it's going to be a 10-point loss. Feels like either Clemson shows up and it's maybe kind of a blowout, And then it's, we added Fran. We thought we were so much better, but we still can't compete with these good teams. We're going to get slaughtered all, this is what the callers will be saying if it doesn't go well. And then if it goes well and they win, it's, holy cow, can we sign Fran Monday afternoon? Can we make sure we keep him? This is the best coach ever. Yeah, we overreact on Monday anyway, but I do feel like I've never felt, even though I'm saying Clemson is going to win the game and fairly big, I'm predicting a 21-point win, there's a fairly good shot that Syracuse wins the game, even though there's a 21-point disparity in my head as the prediction. Like, those two things don't normally have it, or there's normally not as good of a chance of a win in a game that I'm predicting them to not cover 17.5 points. Honestly, I think the cameras just got out of whack a little bit. Because we had to move them around for the Mario and Steve double today. That was a little bit of a different shot. But maybe we should move them up so you see that sign, Kev. Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Bowling Ball. I mean, it was hard for me to pick only 13 points for a Jeff Nixon offense because I'm so high on him.
SportsTalk.com and ESPN Radio Syracuse.
You need headphones? Welcome back into Drive Time. Orange and Clemson tomorrow. It'll be a noon kickoff. We're previewing the big matchup. Always fun when Clemson is on the schedule. There's been some great games in this series history. And right now we've got Giovanni Heater, producer of the show, and our watch party guy tomorrow, who has hopped in the studio with us. We'll get his thoughts on the matchup. And it's going to be a whole lot of fun tomorrow, Gio. Out at Shaughnessy's, fans will be flocking to Shaughnessy's, I'm sure, tomorrow to see you and Mike McAllister. At least they should be, because that'll be a fun time tomorrow.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing everybody. I got to say, I was pretty blown away week one, the UConn game, first home game of the season with the crowd at Shaughnessy's. I guess going into it, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect, but the place was like shoulder to shoulder, and everyone was eating and hitting the bar and just having a great time. And worth noting, everybody was head to toe in SU gear, so you knew they were there for that reason. Right? Yeah,
well, it is a good spot to go before a home game. That's why we typically do it for the pregame shows when it's a home football game. And you're always out there, for anyone that doesn't know, for the home games. But this is going to be a special deal tomorrow because even though it's a road game, we're going to do a watch party. We're going to do a lot of these throughout the season at different locations. And the first one happens to be at Shaughnessy's Irish Pub. So downtown Syracuse tomorrow. And you and Mike McAllister, which I think we know Mike McAllister will let the refs have it if there is moments. And there have been moments in the Syracuse-Clemson rivalry or series history with the refs, making some controversial calls.
Yeah. You think back to that 2022 game, and there was the situation where they call it on Syracuse, the late hit out of bounds on Klubnik, which was probably the appropriate call until the favor was not returned when Syracuse was driving. Schrader was hit out of bounds and no call, and definitely played an impact in the game. But no, I fully intend to kind of let Mike take the keys and run with it tomorrow and just sit back and enjoy with everybody, because I'm sure he's going to be pretty entertaining and probably willing to say more crazy stuff than I am. So.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, if you're watching the game tomorrow, if you can't come out to Shaughnessy's, QSportsTalk.com, we will have a stream going. It'll be Gio and Mike. So I've already laid out the case. I'm a negative Nancy today. I'm down on Syracuse's chances.
Yeah.
I mean, you seem, I'm sure you're better or more positive than I am at this point, right, on Cuse?
I'm a little more positive maybe than you are, really, and it has nothing to do with Syracuse, because I haven't been completely impressed with what Syracuse has put on the field thus far. The Tennessee game's so tough to gauge because week one with anything is so tough to gauge and get a true sample of what things are. There's a whole feeling out process to it. I was impressed that the offense was able to put up 24 points, and I still felt like they left points on the table because you're going for 2 late in the game.
Yeah.
And, that's points. And you're going for it on 4th down in the red zone, where at a different stage in the game or a closer game, you're probably kicking a field goal. So they probably left somewhere from 6 to 10 points, on the table, on the field against Tennessee and still put up 24. I don't know how much you can take away from the UConn game because then they go and lose to an FCS opponent in Delaware. And then, of course, the Colgate game, it's awesome to see him, drop 66 on the scoreboard and have Angeli throw for 400 yards in 2 consecutive weeks. But again, you're playing Colgate, and that's no disrespect to Colgate. That's just the reality of the situation. It's more about, for me, Clemson. And I have not been impressed with Clemson so far.
Nor should you. I haven't either. It's just, is there any fear in you that this is the week Clemson figures it out and they're getting healthier?
Well, Tim, you went to school here, and so you know.
Yeah.
But I've probably been rooting for this team even longer than you have. I would say,
course.
Right? You grew up in North Carolina, of course. It would be just Syracuse's luck for this to be the week Clemson puts it all together on offense, right? Wouldn't that be the most Syracuse thing ever?
Yeah, I guess in some regards, like I laid out, when Syracuse goes down there as big underdogs in the Dino era, they played very well in these games. Noon kickoff, Death Valley, we've seen them sort of punch above their weight. And I don't really know if it requires punching above your weight as much as those teams would have, because Clemson's in a different phase here, and I think they are on the decline undoubtedly as a program. And I think Fran Brown has the right pieces, but it's a younger team. And I just worry that Clemson, they're super experienced, and it just boggles my mind that they're playing this poorly through 3 weeks.
It's so bizarre, and it's kind of head-scratching. I think it really all goes to the quarterback.
Yeah.
I said preseason coming into the year about Cade Klubnik. Now, I was super high on him with a lot of people. Like, for whatever it's worth, when I put together like who I think's going to New York City for the Heisman, Cade Klubnik was a guy that was going to be there. Didn't have him winning it, but he was going to be in New York City. So that just goes to show what I thought of Cade Klubnik as a quarterback. But there's a level of unproven nature out of Cade Klubnik. When you really think about it and think back to Clemson, what big games has he played in that he has excelled? He hasn't.
I think the Texas game was the best he's looked, the playoff game last year.
And they lost by
14.
2 possessions.
Yeah. They were kind of coming back in the game. It was 38-24. So I think there's something to be said. 24 points against Texas last year is a pretty good performance. Texas was holding everyone to under 20, it felt like. But you're right. I mean, he has not looked good in big games. But are you concerned that he doesn't have to look good in big games, or this isn't a defense that is good enough to really test him? Because like I said, he struggles under pressure, and I'm just not optimistic that Syracuse is going to get any pressure on him.
We haven't seen it. I mean, you were talking about it earlier in the show. We have not seen it. And we thought coming into last week and the UConn game, let's see this. It's tough against Tennessee, right? They're going to have a good offensive line, SEC-level bodies. Let's see him get after the quarterback and create some havoc plays. Like, doesn't even necessarily getting home, just be in the way and make things difficult. And they really haven't done that yet this year.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting tomorrow because we had Mario predict a win earlier on Orange Nation for Syracuse.
Oh, did he really?
I'm predicting Syracuse not even to cover. The predictions are all over the map, so I'm excited just to see the game at this point, like I'm sure Fran is, and then we can all overreact on Monday, and also overreact during the watch party, I guess, in real time.
I don't even know if you know the answer to this question. Will there be callers? I've never been a part of a show from Shaughnessy's. Will there be callers even though we're there?
Yes, yeah.
Oh.
I'll show you how to bring it up and everything. Yeah.
Well, wonderful. I can't wait to talk about it after the game. We'll have a full hour to chat.
After a Clemson game, we got to make time for callers.
Oh,
whether it's overreaction, in one way or the other. I feel like there will be callers, and they will need to get their thoughts out after this one. But that's Giovanni Heater. He'll be out at the Labatt Blue watch party tomorrow with Mike McAllister, so keep that in mind. That's at Shaughnessy's Irish Pub tomorrow. We'll hit our final timeout. We'll wrap things up next on Drive Time.
This Saturday, join Gio Heater.
Thanks, man. Yeah. So, Kev, what different schemes do you want? You want more aggressive, less aggressive? Because I'm not against that. I almost feel like they weren't aggressive last year, so now they're trying to be more aggressive. And I don't know. We'll see. I mean, yeah, more aggressive. I mean, that was the thing Dabo said in his presser, which he's obviously going to be nice about Syracuse, but he was like, the thing that really stands out is just how aggressive they are. Like, they get after you, how physical they are. And you hear that a lot from opposing coaches. I'm fine with a team that's aggressive on defense and is going to get burned every once in a while, especially when you have Jeff Nixon as your OC. What you don't like is when you have those defenses that give up the 10-play, 80-yard drives over 6 minutes and just, like, get tired out as the game progresses. And Clemson's defense has been vulnerable to some long drives. Watching Clemson, I feel like they have a little bit of the Syracuse offensive thing where once they go up tempo, no huddle, and Klubnik's kind of in a 2-minute drill mindset, they look much better. But I think they don't want to do that knowing that you also have to, like, every coach says complimentary football. Fran says it all the time. You don't want to just go out, try and go up tempo, and then you don't get the first down and you're only out, your defense only gets a rest for a minute or two. Yeah, Travion Mack, I think we've said it. He's the most underrated injury to this point. Great day. That was the most positive news of all the injuries last night. I expected Willis to play, expected Grant to play, but hearing Mack is back is awesome. The return of the Mack. Yep. Got to find a way to get some pressure. You're 3-0. Wow. I will bet then, just because deep down I wouldn't mind if I'm totally wrong about this game and Syracuse shocks the world. Yeah, let's bet a Wildcat pizza on it, Kev. Are we just doing the spread? And you also have to tell me, who have you bet with on staff and taken down? All right, spread it is 17.5. We're calling it 17.5 as the spread. Remind me if I forget, but we'll do a Wildcat pizza on the spread. I'm in on that. Yeah, Thomas hasn't played much. You talking about Chris Thomas, right? He plays like 2 snaps a game. He really hasn't been out there much. Brooks he's out there, but he hasn't been great. Jordan, Mike, and Pauly. Okay, that's really the murderer's row of of guys to beat. I shouldn't talk too confidently. I think the spread is going to be close, but I'm all for putting a friendly wager every once in a while. Yeah, I thought we'd see more of Chris Thomas. That would be nice, Jen. Going down there and winning would be very nice. I would happily get on here and say I was dead wrong.
I'm on QSportsTalk.com.
Wrapping up the show for the week on Drive Time, which means game day is near. Game day is tomorrow. One last reminder to come on out to Shaughnessy's Irish Pub tomorrow. Full pregame coverage, full watch party at Shaughnessy's. There will be lots of Orange fans, I'm sure, in the house tomorrow. Geo Heater, Mike McAllister will be doing their pregame show live from Shaughnessy's Irish Pub. Labatt Blue watch party during the game. These are the type of things that we really want to get in the habit of doing, and we do have some other ones lined up this year, but it makes it a whole lot more fun if we get a good turnout for this, so we'd appreciate it if you come on out tomorrow to Shaughnessy's Irish Pub. Enjoy the game with us, the big SU-Clemson game. Be a fun way to spend your Saturday. Post-game show will be out there as well tomorrow. That's going to kind of wrap things up for today on the show. We went long in our other segments, but we appreciate all of you for listening throughout the week. Our third week of the show is done, and we'll have lots of things to discuss on Monday. This is going to be a game where we find out a lot about Syracuse, and we find out a lot about Clemson. And as I said to start the show, I've got Clemson covering. I've got them winning the game 34-13 over the Orange, but it is going to be an overreaction Monday one way or the other. I'm not counting out the Syracuse's chances of winning this game because I do think Clemson has given you no reason to really trust them and really buy in on them outside of just they're a talented team that returns a lot of production, and I feel like they got to find it at some point. So that wraps up the show for the week. Thanks to Giovanni Heater for producing as always. Thanks to everyone in the Q Sports Talk Twitch chat and Q Sports Talk YouTube chat as well. Don't forget, noon kick tomorrow, pregame coverage from Shaughnessy's, watch party on our Q Sports Talk Twitch stream. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. Just excited to see this game finally get underway, and then we will hash it out with all of you on Monday. Coming up next on ESPN Radio is Yankees on Deck with me. We'll preview the Yankees and the Orioles. So stay with us if you want to hear some Yankees baseball coverage on the other side. And thanks for listening to Drive Time on ESPN Radio and QSportsTalk.com.
Did you miss Drive Time with Tim Leonard? Well, here's what you missed.
I do think it's good for the fans